He thought he'd die alone on that moon. Then she came howling through the ice. Whispers in the frozen void. The control panel sparked violently as Commander Leona Reeves fought with the failing thrusters. Europa's pristine white surface rushed toward her view screen at alarming speed. Mayday, mayday. This is Europa Scout Expedition 7. I've lost primary systems, and I'm going down. Her transmission crackled into space, but Jupiter's electromagnetic interference made communication nearly impossible this far out. The impact came faster than expected. Metal screamed against ice, and darkness took her. Consciousness returned in waves of pain. Leona's eyes fluttered open to find her cockpit in ruins. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow across frost-covered surfaces. The main view screen had cracked, allowing Europa's killing cold to seep inside. "System check," she croaked, tasting blood on her lip. The computer remained stubbornly silent. Dead. She glanced at her suit's wrist display. Oxygen at 62% and dropping. 6 hours at most. Leona forced herself to move methodically despite the pain. Her left leg was injured, not broken, but a deep gash ran from knee to ankle. She applied a fast seal from her emergency kit, wincing as the biofoam expanded into the wound. Suited up, she gathered what supplies remained. The distress beacon was intact, but needed higher ground to transmit past Jupiter's interference. Outside, Europa stretched before her in endless fields of ice, its surface bathed in the dim light of distant sun, and the massive gas giant looming overhead. "No rescue for at least 4 days," she muttered, limping away from the wreckage. "So I'll be long dead before anyone arrives." The thought should have terrified her, but 15 years in deep space exploration had prepared Leona for this possibility. What she hadn't prepared for was the sensation of being watched. She paused, scanning the barren landscape. Nothing moved across the ice fields, yet the feeling persisted. Europa was supposed to be lifeless on the surface. Any potential biological activity would be in the vast ocean beneath the ice shell. 3 hours of painful hiking brought her to a ridge. Leona set up the distress beacon, knowing it was mostly symbolic. As she worked, a low sound carried across the ice, something between a howl and a whistle. Atmospheric anomaly, she told herself, but her scientific mind knew better. Sound didn't travel that way in Europa's thin atmosphere. The beacon deployed with a soft beep. Oxygen, 37%. Temperature dropping as Jupiter's shadow crept across this hemisphere. Leona turned to make her way back to the ship when she saw it. A shadow moving between ice formations, too fluid to be a trick of light, too deliberate to be natural. "Hello." Her voice sounded ridiculous even to her own ears. Nothing could survive out here unprotected. The shadow moved again, closer this time. Leona reached for her emergency flare, the closest thing to a weapon she had. Something stepped from behind an ice column. Bipedal, roughly human-sized, but clearly not human. Its body was covered in silvery white fur that shimmered in the dim light. A wolf-like head tilted curiously, with alert ears and eyes that gleamed with intelligence. It wore what appeared to be handcrafted garments made from unfamiliar materials. Leona's scientific training battled with primal fear. This was impossible. Europa couldn't support complex life on its surface. Her oxygen alert chimed. 29%. The cold was seeping through her suit now. Her injured leg throbbed, and spots danced at the edges of her vision. The creature approached cautiously, making soft clicking sounds. As Leona's consciousness began to fade, her last sight was of those intelligent eyes studying her with what seemed like concern. When she woke, Leona was certain she had died. She was warm, breathing easily, and her leg didn't hurt. Then she opened her eyes and reality shattered again. She lay in a chamber carved from ice, but impossibly, it was warm. Soft blue light emanated from crystalline formations embedded in the walls. Her suit had been carefully removed and hung nearby. The gash on her leg had been treated with some kind of fibrous bandage that pulsed with gentle warmth. "Not dead then," she whispered. "Just insane." A soft clicking sound drew her attention to the entrance. The wolf-like being ducked inside, carrying what appeared to be a bowl. Leona decided based on his build, approached slowly and offered the bowl. Inside was a steaming liquid that smelled surprisingly like herbal tea. Leona hesitated, then took a careful sip. It tasted earthy but pleasant, and warmth spread through her immediately. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Leona." The being watched her intently, then placed a hand on his chest. "Tarak," he said, the word rough but distinct. Leona nearly dropped the bowl. "You speak." Tarak made a gesture with his hands, then pointed to his ears, and then to her mouth. "You're learning. From listening to me." When he nodded, Leona felt a rush of excitement that overshadowed her confusion. "How is this possible? How are you possible?" Over the next hours, they developed a rudimentary communication system. Tarak could mimic human speech with difficulty, but understood more than he could say. He communicated primarily through gestures and drawings scratched into ice tablets. By the time Jupiter's light returned to this region, Leona had learned that Tarak was part of a small community living beneath Europa's surface. They accessed the surface only briefly using respiratory aids, a detail that explained how he survived the atmosphere, but raised countless other questions. "How long?" Leona asked, gesturing widely. "How long have your people been here?" Tarak's expression grew troubled. He scratched symbols into an ice tablet, circles within circles. "Many cycles," he said carefully. "Many." When Leona was strong enough to walk, Tarak led her through a network of tunnels that descended deeper beneath the surface. They emerged into a vast chamber where the ice turned to stone, illuminated by the same crystal formations. Leona stopped short, staring in disbelief. Against the far wall stood a habitat module. A human habitat module, ancient and weathered, but unmistakable. And emblazoned on its side was a logo she recognized immediately. The Planetary Exploration Coalition's insignia, her employer. But the PEC had only sent 3 expeditions to Europa before hers, and all were orbital surveys. No one had landed here. "Tarak," she whispered, "what is this?" He looked at her, those intelligent eyes filled with something like sadness. He pointed to the module, then to her, then made a circular motion. "You've seen humans before," Leona realized. "You've seen people like me." Tarak nodded slowly. He took her hand and led her closer to the module. The airlock was partially open, frozen in time. Inside, Leona found equipment dating back at least 50 years. Technology that predated the PC itself. "This is impossible," she muttered, examining a logbook with entries stopping abruptly in 2089. 30 years ago. No human expedition landed here then. It's all documented. Tarak watched her from the doorway, his posture tense. He pointed upward, then made a gesture like something falling, crashing. "They crashed, like me." When he nodded, she felt cold that had nothing to do with the temperature. "How many?" Tarak's expression became unreadable. He made the circular motion again, more emphatically. Before Leona could question him further, a low vibration rumbled through the chamber. Dust and ice particles drifted down from the ceiling. Tarak's ears flattened against his head, and he growled, a sound Leona felt more than heard. "What is it?" she asked, instantly alert. Tarak pulled her toward the exit, his movements urgent. As they left the chamber, Leona glanced back and froze. Through the habitat's viewport, she glimpsed movement inside. Impossible movement, as if someone walked there now, in that abandoned module. Outside, they climbed to a ridge overlooking a vast plain of ice. In the distance, strange lights pulsed beneath the surface, forming patterns too regular to be natural. "What is that?" Leona asked, though she already knew Tarak couldn't give her the complex answer she needed. But he surprised her. He looked at the lights, then at her, his eyes reflecting the distant glow. "Watchers," he said clearly. "They know you here. Again." Again? Leona felt her heart rate accelerate. What do you mean again? Terek's gaze turned to Jupiter hanging massive in the sky, then back to her. Not first time, he said, each word careful and precise. Not first you. The implications hit Leona like a physical blow. The outdated module. The impossibility of Terek's people. The circular gestures he kept making. Time, she whispered. You're trying to tell me something about time. Terek nodded slowly, relief evident in his posture. He pointed to the lights pulsing in the distance. They come now, he said gravely. Always come. When human crashes. When cycle starts again. As if on cue, the ground trembled beneath them, and the lights began to move, not randomly, but with purpose, moving toward them. We go, Terek said, tugging at her arm. Not safe. They find you every time. Every time. Leona echoed, her mind racing to process the impossible. How many times have I crashed here, Terek? His answer was lost as a great cracking sound split the air. The ice field before them began to splinter, and from beneath the surface, something massive was awakening. Terek pulled her back toward the tunnels, his voice urgent. Run now. Explain later. As they fled across the ice, Leona's mind filled with questions. Who were the Watchers? What was the cycle Terek kept mentioning? And most disturbing of all, how many versions of herself had stood exactly where she was, feeling exactly what she felt, thinking these same thoughts? The answers lay somewhere ahead, in the heart of Europa's mysteries, if she lived long enough to find them. Cycles of deception. Leona and Terek huddled in a small ice cave, listening to the distant rumbling that had finally begun to subside. Her breath fogged in the cold air despite the warming crystals Terek had activated. I need answers, she said, watching Terek carefully arrange specialized breathing apparatus, the device that allowed his kind to survive Europa's thin atmosphere. What did you mean by not first me? Terek's ears twitched. He sat cross-legged before her and drew an intricate diagram in the frost covering the floor, circles intersecting with lines, creating a complex pattern. Cycles, he explained, his voice clearer with each attempt at human speech. You come. Crash. Find old station. Watchers wake. Some cycles you die fast. Some cycles we help. You learn. But always. He swept his hand through the drawing, erasing it. Reset. A time loop. Leona's scientific mind rebelled against the concept, but the evidence was mounting. How is that possible? Terek pointed upward. Stars wrong. Leona frowned. What do you mean? Come. He led her to a higher chamber with a clear ice ceiling. Above them, Jupiter dominated the sky. But something was indeed wrong. The arrangement of the gas giant's moons was off. Io and Ganymede were not where they should be relative to Europa's position. That's impossible, she whispered. Unless time broken here. Terek looked at her with those intelligent eyes. My ancestors were like you. Human. Scientists. They study anomaly, get trapped. Many cycles, many changes. The revelation stunned her. Terek's people had evolved from humans, trapped in this temporal anomaly for what could have been centuries in subjective time. The facility I saw. First expedition, Terek confirmed. Started loop. In that moment, Leona made her decision. I want to see more. The source of this anomaly. Terek's fur bristled. Dangerous. Watcher's guard. But if we don't try, I'll be stuck in this loop forever, right? She met his gaze steadily. How many times have we had this conversation? Terek. His silence was answer enough. They prepared meticulously. Terek provided Leona with layers of the insulating material his people used, enhancing her suit's capabilities. He created a makeshift weapon for her, a spear tipped with a crystalline substance that pulsed with energy. Disrupts Watchers, he explained. Temporary. Their journey took them deeper beneath Europa's surface than Leona had ever imagined possible. The tunnels grew increasingly artificial, no longer ice caves but constructed passageways lined with a material she couldn't identify. Strange symbols adorned the walls, some familiar from human mathematics, others completely alien. "Who built these tunnels?" she asked. "We did. Each cycle. Learn more. Build more." Tarek's voice held pride. "Remember more, too." They reached a vast chamber unlike anything Leona had seen. At its center stood a structure that defied conventional architecture, a spiraling tower of crystalline material and metal, pulsing with blue-white energy. Around it, several humanoid figures moved with mechanical precision. The Watchers. They weren't robots as Leona had expected, but neither were they alive in any conventional sense. Their forms shimmered, transparent one moment, solid the next, like echoes of people caught between states of being. "What are they?" she whispered. "Guardians," Tarek replied quietly. "Trapped like us, but broken. First scientists, now just fragments." One of the Watchers paused, its featureless face turning toward their hiding place. Leona held her breath. After a moment, it resumed its patrol. "There." Tarek pointed to a smaller structure near the base of the tower. "Records. Each cycle." They moved carefully, using the shadows and strange acoustic properties of the chamber to avoid detection. When they reached the structure, Leona found it was a data terminal of sorts, though far more advanced than anything she recognized. Tarek operated it with practiced ease. Screens of light appeared in the air before them, showing logs, data, images. Leona saw herself, not just once, but dozens of times. Different versions of her, in different states, some injured, some healthy, some alone, some with Tarek. "How many times?" she asked, her voice barely audible. 57 documented cycles," Tarek said solemnly. "Not all complete records." One recording caught her attention, a version of herself, older, face lined with determination. "This is Commander Leona Reeves, Cycle 43. If you're watching this, then you're me." And the loop continues. The anomaly was created when the original expedition's antimatter containment system ruptured during landing. It created a temporal fracture that's been widening with each cycle. The Watchers are quantum echoes of the original crew, programmed to maintain the anomaly because they believe it's the only way to survive. Her doppelganger leaned closer to the camera. "The control core is inside the central tower. Destabilize it, and the loop might break. But the Watchers will do anything to stop you. In my cycle, I almost succeeded, but..." The recording abruptly ended. Leona turned to Tarek. "You knew all this." His eyes held ancient sadness. "Each cycle, I help. Each cycle, we fail. But we keep trying," she realized. "Why?" "Hope," he said simply. A sudden alarm shattered the moment. Lights flashed throughout the chamber as the Watchers turned as one toward their position. "They know." Tarek grabbed her arm. "Run. To tower." They sprinted across the open floor as energy pulses struck around them. One grazed Leona's shoulder, sending pain shooting down her arm, but she kept moving. The central tower loomed before them, its entrance unsealed. Inside, the architecture became even more disorienting. Walkways that seemed to fold back on themselves, gravity shifting without warning. At the center, suspended in a field of energy, was a swirling mass of light and darkness. "The containment breach," Leona breathed, "frozen at the moment of explosion." Tarek nodded grimly. "Core. Must destabilize specific frequency." Heavy footsteps approached from behind. The Watchers had followed, their movements more coordinated now, more purposeful. The first appeared in the doorway, its form solidifying into something almost human. "Commander Reeves," it said, voice echoing strangely. "Protocol dictates containment must be maintained." "The containment is killing us," Leona replied, "trapping us in an endless loop." "Protocol dictates. Your protocol is flawed." She raised the crystal spear Tarek had given her. "The antimatter breach can be properly contained without the temporal loop." The Watcher advanced. "Previous iterations have attempted reasoning. Protocol remains unchanged." Leona glanced at the control panel surrounding the energy field. Complex, but not incomprehensible. Similar enough to technology she recognized that she might be able to. The Watcher lunged. Tarek intercepted it, his natural agility surprising the entity. They grappled, giving Leona the opening she needed. She rushed to the controls, frantically analyzing the systems. More Watchers entered. One fired an energy pulse that struck Tarek in the back. He fell with a pained howl. Tarek. Leona threw her spear, catching the Watcher in what would have been its chest. The entity destabilized, its form dissolving temporarily. She turned back to the controls. Time was running out. Her previous selves had failed 57 times. What had they missed? The answer came in a burst of intuition. They had tried to shut down the anomaly. But what if that was impossible? What if the solution wasn't to end it, but to direct it? Leona's fingers flew across the interface. The breach can't be contained completely, she muttered, but it can be channeled. She began rerouting the energy, creating a controlled temporal corridor rather than a chaotic bubble. Behind her, Tarek was fighting desperately, keeping the Watchers at bay despite his injury. Almost there, she called. The system resisted her changes, alerts flashing across the screens. A failsafe. A Watcher broke through, grabbing her arm. Protocol dictates. Protocol be damned. Leona slammed her palm onto the final command sequence. The chamber shuddered violently. The energy field around the antimatter breach pulsed, contracted, then expanded in a controlled wave. The Watcher holding her dissolved, screaming in a voice that sounded almost human again. Tarek, she shouted, we need to get out of here. He limped to her side as the tower began to shake itself apart. Together they ran, navigating the collapsing structure as reality itself seemed to warp around them. Behind them, the Watchers were disappearing one by one, their forms breaking down as the temporal anomaly that sustained them changed. They burst out into the main chamber just as the tower imploded, collapsing not with an explosion, but with a strange silence, as if that section of reality simply ceased to exist. Leona and Tarek didn't stop running until they reached the surface tunnels. The ground continued to shake, ice cracking around them. Is it working? She gasped. Tarek pointed to the sky visible through a rift in the ice. Jupiter hung there, but something was changing. The positions of the other moons were shifting, aligning with where they should be. Time. Healing, he said. They emerged onto Europa's surface as dawn broke. The ice fields were transforming, the landscape reshaping itself as the temporal corrections cascaded outward. In the distance, Leona's crashed ship looked different, more intact than she remembered. What happens now? She asked. To you, to your people. Tarek looked at her, a smile revealing slightly pointed teeth. Unknown. New cycle begins, but different now. Will you remember me? The question surprised her even as she asked it. He touched his forehead, then her heart. Always remember. Some things stronger than time. In the sky above, a light appeared, moving, artificial. A rescue ship, responding to her distress beacon. They're coming for me, she said, amazed. The loop was broken. Time was flowing normally. Tarek nodded, looking at the approaching vessel, then back at the entrance to his underground world. Go. Live. Tell story. Come with me, Leona urged. Earth should know about you, about what happened here. He shook his head. My people need me. Need to find new way now. The rescue ship was getting closer. Soon, they would spot her on their sensors. Tarek took her hand, pressing something into it. A small crystal, similar to those that had provided light and warmth in his dwelling. To remember, he said. When you doubt, I'll come back, she promised. Properly this time, with a real expedition. His eyes held ancient wisdom. Perhaps, or perhaps new story begins. As the rescue ship's spotlights swept the ice, Tarek backed away toward the tunnel entrance. His form seemed to shimmer slightly, features becoming more pronounced, more wolfish, and yet somehow more human at the same time. "Goodbye, Leona Reeves," he said, his voice clearer than she'd ever heard it. "Until next cycle." He disappeared into the tunnel just as the rescue team spotted her. As they rushed toward her across the ice, Leona clutched the crystal to her chest, feeling its warmth pulse in sync with her heartbeat. Europa had changed her, and she had changed Europa. Whatever happened next, whether she returned with a proper scientific team, or whether Tarek's people charted their own course through time, one thing was certain: the endless loop was broken. The cycles of deception had ended, and in their place, something new could begin.